It was a quiet, unassuming afternoon in the Shire, the kind where even the breeze felt too lazy to move. Birds chirped, the grass danced in slow sways, and hobbits bustled about with pies and pipeweed. And somewhere in the middle of that peace, an old wizard in grey robes stood at the edge of Bag End, a curious frown resting beneath his wide-brimmed hat. Gandalf the Grey had returned to visit his old friend, Bilbo Baggins, just as he'd done countless times before. But this time, something was different, very different. And it would take 60 long years, countless miles, and the edge of madness itself for Gandalf to finally understand what had been hidden in plain sight all along. Bilbo greeted him with a smile and the comfort of second breakfast. There was laughter, old stories, and the familiar clinking of teacups. But beneath it all, Gandalf felt a strange unease. He couldn't explain it then, just a whisper in the wind, a tightening in his chest whenever Bilbo casually touched the little gold ring he wore on a chain. It seemed ordinary. It felt harmless. But Gandalf's instincts, honed over centuries, kept tugging at him. Something wasn't right. The truth is, Gandalf had always suspected that Bilbo's tale of how he found the ring in Gollum's cave didn't add up. It was too convenient, too clean. Bilbo, the most unlikely burglar in the world, had somehow emerged from the depths of the misty mountains with a magical ring that made him vanish. At first, Gandalf dismissed it as luck, or perhaps a forgotten trinket of the dwarfs. After all, this was Bilbo, a hobbit who couldn't lie without turning pink. But even as the years rolled by, Gandalf couldn't shake the feeling that Bilbo's ring was more than it seemed. Still, what could he do? The world was changing, the darkness in the east growing stronger. Orcs stirred, whispers of the necromancer spread through Greenwood, and the White Council was busy debating strategies while the enemy gained power. Gandalf had battles to fight, clues to follow, and the safety of Middle-earth to think about. A single ring in the Shire didn't seem like a priority. Not then. But sometimes, the smallest decisions echo the loudest. Thousands of miles away and thousands of years apart from the forging of the One Ring, another story was beginning to unfold, this one, in a modern world. In a city filled with hurried footsteps, loud engines, and tired eyes buried in phones, a crowded bus screeched to a halt. A young black teenager named Malik stepped on, backpack slung over one shoulder, his face worn not from age but from expectations. He had dreams of becoming a doctor, a quiet strength inherited from his grandmother, and a heart trained to notice others. As he scanned the bus for a seat, he spotted a pregnant woman standing near the front, one hand gripping the rail tightly, the other resting on her stomach. She looked exhausted, her skin pale and her feet swollen in worn-out flats. Without thinking, Malik stepped forward, tapped her gently on the arm, and offered her his seat with a soft smile. "Please," he said. "You look like you need it more than I do." She hesitated, then smiled back, touched by his kindness. She sat down carefully and reached into her purse. A moment later, she handed Malik a folded note, her eyes shining in a way he didn't understand. The bus rumbled on, and Malik held the paper without opening it, unsure if it was a thank you, or something more. 2 people. 2 worlds. And yet, a single act, a seat offered, a ring pocketed, can change everything. As Malik would soon discover, the note held a secret that would turn his world upside down. Just as Gandalf's growing suspicion would lead him to the ancient archives of Minas Tirith, where a forgotten script would confirm his worst fears. The ring in Bilbo's pocket was not just a magic trick or a clever thief's tool. It was the One Ring, Sauron's ring, the very heart of darkness. But if that's true, why did it take Gandalf 60 years to see it? And what was written in the note Malik now held, fingers trembling as he unfolded the paper? The answers are coming, but some truths take time. And others are more dangerous than they appear. Malik held the note in his palm for a moment longer, the creased paper warm from his skin. The bus continued its stop-and-go rhythm through the city, and the pregnant woman he had given his seat to now leaned back with her eyes closed, breathing slowly. She didn't seem to be paying him any more attention. For some reason, that made the note feel heavier in his hand. He glanced down at it again, unsure. Curiosity battled with hesitation. He didn't want to seem nosy, but there was something about the way she'd given it to him, quiet, almost urgent, that made it impossible to ignore. He unfolded it. The handwriting was soft and careful, Like someone had written it in a rush but didn't want to seem that way. Just one sentence. But it hit him like a bolt of lightning. Your kindness saved more than me today. Check your email. That was it. No name. No clue. Just a strange, almost cryptic message and the sudden feeling that this wasn't just about a bus seat anymore. He looked up quickly, but the woman was gone. At some point while he was lost in thought, she had gotten off at the last stop. He stood up and scanned the street through the window, but she had vanished into the crowd. Back in the past, far away from city buses and mysterious notes, Gandalf found himself pacing the library halls of Minas Tirith, lit only by the flickering glow of torches. The air smelled of dust, ink, and forgotten secrets. He hadn't come here lightly. Something had been gnawing at him ever since he last visited Bilbo. The ring. Bilbo had it for decades, and yet it didn't seem to age him. Hobbits lived long, yes, but this long? And then there was the odd way Bilbo clung to it. Not like a trinket, but like a lifeline. Gandalf pulled scroll after scroll from the shelves. He read feverishly, moving from records of Isildur's final days to the riddles of Elendil's broken line. Time passed quickly when searching for answers you hoped you'd never find. And when he stumbled across the words written in an ancient script, it betrayed Isildur to his death, his blood ran cold. Back in the present day, Malik rushed home. The note burned in his pocket as much as the questions burned in his mind. As soon as he got to his room, he kicked off his shoes, dropped his bag on the floor, and powered on his laptop. He logged into his email, fingers trembling slightly. There was a new message in his inbox from an unfamiliar address. No subject line. He clicked it open. The message was simple but strange. We've been watching you. You showed the kind of heart the world needs more of. Come to 1520, East Mason Street tomorrow at 4 p.m. Don't be late. There was no signature. No name. No hint of what this was about. He sat back, staring at the screen, his thoughts spinning. It didn't make sense. Was it a prank? A scam? But the woman on the bus, she'd looked serious. Almost scared. Like giving him the note had been something huge. And now someone was watching him? He didn't sleep much that night. Every creak of the floorboards outside his room, every buzz of a notification on his phone made his nerves jump. He thought about deleting the message, ignoring it, pretending it had never happened. But something inside him said this was real. Bigger than it looked. Maybe even meant for him. Meanwhile, Gandalf's doubts were evolving into certainty. He rode north after leaving Minas Tirith, his thoughts heavy and urgent. He had to see Saruman, the head of their order, the one who had studied the rings of power more than any other. If anyone could confirm his fears, it would be him. When Gandalf arrived at Isengard, he laid out everything: the ring Bilbo had found, the odd behavior, the aging that never came, the script from Minas Tirith. But Saruman, calm and smooth-voiced, waved it away. He spoke of ancient magic being forgotten, of hobbits being small and simple, incapable of causing great danger. He assured Gandalf that it was not the One Ring. But Gandalf could feel something was off. Not just with Bilbo. With Saruman too. As he left Orthanc, Saruman's tall tower behind him, a sense of dread curled in Gandalf's stomach. For the first time in his long life, he realized he couldn't trust everyone he once did. And that the truth might lie not in the words of powerful men, but in quiet places like the Shire. In his own quiet corner of the world, Malik didn't tell anyone about the message. Not his mom, who worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on. Not his best friend Jamal, who'd think it was crazy. He just showed up at the address. It was an old building, the kind you walk past 100 times without ever noticing. It looked closed, windows covered, no sign on the door. But at 4 o'clock sharp, the door clicked open. A woman greeted him inside. Not the pregnant woman from the bus, someone else. Older, in her 60s maybe, but with sharp eyes that studied him like he was both a question and an answer. "You're Malik?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "Good. We need to talk." As she led him through the quiet halls, she spoke without turning her head. "What you did on that bus wasn't just polite. It was brave. It was the kind of decision that ripples outward, affecting people you don't even know exist yet." They stopped in a room filled with screens, paper files, and photographs pinned to corkboards. Malik felt like he'd stepped into a movie scene. One of the photos showed him sitting on the bus, offering his seat. "Who are you?" he asked, finally. "We're the kind of people who look for signs of change," the woman replied. "And your name came up for a reason." Malik felt overwhelmed. This was way beyond him. He was just a kid who gave up his seat. What could they possibly want with him? And then, the woman turned to face him fully. "That woman you helped. She wasn't just some random passenger. She was carrying something important, information, something dangerous. And you made it possible for her to get off that bus unnoticed. You may have saved her life." Malik's mouth went dry. He didn't know what to say. He didn't feel like a hero. He just did what his grandma taught him: help where you can, and be decent, even when no one's watching. But apparently, someone had been watching. Far away, Gandalf rode again for the Shire. He couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible had begun long ago, and he had failed to stop it. 60 years had passed since Bilbo found that ring. That should have been time enough. But he hadn't seen it. He hadn't wanted to see it. Now, darkness was rising. And everything was about to change. In 2 different timelines, one in the land of hobbits and wizards, the other in a city that never seemed to sleep, 2 people were about to find out just how deep their stories really went. And neither of them was ready for what came next. The woman watched Malik closely, like she was waiting for him to crack. But he didn't. His heart was pounding, sure, but he stood still, rooted to the floor. This wasn't a movie. This was real. And he had no idea what kind of world he had just stepped into. She finally spoke again, her voice lower now. "We aren't spies. We aren't the government. We're people who try to protect what matters, quietly, behind the scenes. People who pay attention when others look away." Malik didn't understand how a simple act of kindness had put him here. But there was no denying it anymore. Something bigger was at play. He glanced at the walls again, pictures of other people, some young like him, some old. Some circled in red ink. Some crossed out. A whole web of connections, like a puzzle only a few could see clearly. "We've been tracking her for weeks," the woman continued, referring to the pregnant woman on the bus. "She was carrying information about a private corporation funding political chaos overseas. Documents that prove it. She needed to get off that bus without anyone watching her. You made that possible. Whether you meant to or not." Malik blinked slowly, trying to piece it all together. "So what do you want from me now?" Her reply was quick. "Nothing. Not yet. We just want you to understand that sometimes, what you think is small, changes everything." Thousands of years earlier and a world away, another man was being pulled into something far bigger than he had imagined. Gandalf returned to the Shire under a sky beginning to darken. It was strange, nothing looked different. The grass was green, the hobbits were cheerful, and children still chased each other through the fields. But something invisible hung in the air now, like the smell of smoke before you see the fire. He found Bilbo writing at his desk. The old hobbit smiled when he saw Gandalf, but there was a flicker of something else, nervousness, maybe. Or guilt. "You came back so soon," Bilbo said. Gandalf didn't waste time. "Bilbo, the ring. Where is it?" Bilbo hesitated. "Safe. I keep it hidden away. Can I see it?" That question made Bilbo freeze. He looked at Gandalf like the request itself was a threat. "Why?" he asked. "Because I believe it's more dangerous than you know," Gandalf said gently. "And I need to be sure." Bilbo's hand twitched, reaching for his pocket, but then stopped. "It's mine," he said, softly. "I found it. It's not hurting anyone." That sentence told Gandalf everything he needed to know. The ring wasn't just some forgotten trinket. It had taken root in Bilbo's heart. It had started to twist his mind, gently but deeply. Just like it had done with Isildur. Just like it had done with Gollum. But Gandalf said nothing more, for now. He would need help. He would need proof. Because the truth he feared was too heavy to carry alone. Back in the present, Malik walked home in silence. The air outside the building felt colder, heavier. He kept checking over his shoulder, wondering if someone was following him. He told himself he was just being paranoid, but a part of him knew this was only the beginning. The woman hadn't asked him for anything, but people like that didn't show their hand all at once. He had become part of something, whether he liked it or not. At school the next day, everything felt different. The hallways were the same, the teachers were the same, but Malik wasn't. He couldn't focus in class. He kept thinking about what the woman had said. About being watched. About that pregnant stranger who had vanished the moment her mission was done. He wondered what had happened to her. Was she safe? Had she delivered the documents? Or had she simply disappeared, like smoke in the wind? Jamal noticed something was off. "You good, bro?" he asked at lunch. Malik shrugged. "Yeah. Just tired." But Jamal didn't believe him, and Malik didn't feel like explaining. How do you tell someone your seat on a bus might have changed the course of something global? Later that night, a message came through on his phone. No contact. Just coordinates. A time. Midnight. And a short sentence: "If you want the truth, come alone." Malik stared at it for a long time. His mom was already asleep, the apartment quiet. He didn't reply. He just tucked the phone into his hoodie pocket and headed out, sneakers silent on the stairwell. Far from the glow of street lamps and phone screens, Gandalf was digging deeper into his fears. He had sent letters to the elves, to Galadriel and Elrond, asking for counsel. But his most pressing worry wasn't what others would say, it was what he was starting to believe himself. If this truly was the One Ring, that meant Sauron had never been fully defeated. That meant his power would return. That meant war. And no one else seemed ready to see it. Even the other wizards doubted him. Radagast was lost in his forests. Saruman, he was too calm. Too clever. Gandalf began to suspect that maybe even Saruman had reasons to keep the truth hidden. Maybe he wasn't just wrong. Maybe he had chosen to be wrong. In both stories, both timelines, the danger was invisible, creeping beneath the surface like water through cracks in stone. No one saw it clearly. Not yet. But the cracks were widening. And soon, something would break. As Malik approached the location from the message, an abandoned basketball court at the edge of town, he spotted a man standing alone, hoodie up, head down. The wind tugged at the edges of chain-link fences. Streetlights buzzed, casting long shadows. "You came," the man said. Malik kept a safe distance. "Who are you?" The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he tossed Malik a flash drive. "This has what she was carrying. What you helped deliver. Watch it. But be careful who you show it to." Then he walked away, disappearing down a side street without another word. Malik stood there for a long time, the cold pressing into his bones. In his hand, the small piece of plastic felt like it weighed 100 pounds. He had no idea what was on it. But he knew it would change things. Just like Gandalf knew that if he was right about the ring, the piece the world had clung to for so long was just an illusion. And illusions don't last forever. Malik didn't sleep that night. He sat at the edge of his bed, staring at the flash drive like it might burn a hole through his palm. The room around him felt too quiet. Even the clock ticking on the wall seemed loud. He finally plugged the drive into his laptop, hands shaky, unsure of what he was about to see. A folder opened with no label, just 3 video files and a text document titled Eyes Only. He clicked on the first video. It was grainy footage from a hidden camera. A boardroom filled with men and women in suits, their faces sharp, voices low and cold. They were talking about things no regular person should ever hear. Government names. Financial transfers. Staged conflicts in developing countries. One of them even mentioned controlling the media narrative before the elections. Malik felt his stomach turn. This was real. These were powerful people, and what they were doing was illegal, dangerous, and hidden from the public. The second video was worse. It showed the pregnant woman from the bus. Her name was listed in the folder as Leah Daniels, being followed through a city. Different angles, different cameras. She was being watched, tracked, hunted. Malik leaned back, eyes wide, his heart pounding. This wasn't just about being kind on a bus. He had unknowingly stepped into a battlefield. And the people at the top had no problem with silencing anyone who got in their way. Somewhere else in another time, Gandalf stood alone outside Bag End. He watched as Bilbo argued with himself inside the doorway, the ring clutched tightly in his hand. "It's mine," Bilbo muttered again. "Why should I give it away? I've kept it safe all these years." Gandalf remained calm, but inside, he was spiraling. He had seen this before in the notes left behind by Isildur. In the madness that overtook Gollum. The ring didn't need force to break someone. It just needed time. And time had already done its damage. Bilbo's hand shook as he slowly loosened his grip, slipping the ring into a small envelope and placing it on the mantel. His voice cracked. I think I need to rest." Gandalf nodded but said nothing. As soon as Bilbo left the room, Gandalf reached for the envelope. The moment his fingers touched the paper, he felt it, that pull, that whisper. A temptation so deep it wasn't even in words. Just a feeling, a promise. He yanked his hand back as if burned. Even he, the wise, the careful, wasn't immune. Back in the present, Malik copied the files and deleted the originals from the drive. He didn't know who might be tracking it. Then he started typing an email to the only person he thought might believe him, his high school civics teacher, Mr. Kinley. Mr. Kinley used to work in journalism before teaching. He always talked about truth, how powerful it was, how dangerous. But before Malik could hit send, his screen flickered. Then a black window popped up. One message appeared on it, in white text. "Do not share the files. We're watching you now." The laptop shut down on its own. Malik jumped to his feet, nearly knocking over the chair. Someone had hacked him. They knew. He was in deeper than he had ever imagined, and now he was being watched just like Leah had been. The next morning, a black SUV was parked across from his building. Tinted windows. No plates. He didn't recognize it, and it didn't move when he walked past on his way to school. That evening, it was still there. He didn't know whether to run, stay quiet, or call someone, but who? The police. What would he even say? He couldn't prove any of it. And if the people in those videos really had that kind of power, they could erase the truth in a blink. In Middle-earth, Gandalf took the ring to Frodo. The tension in his voice said more than his words. Keep it secret. Keep it safe. He had no choice now. Sauron was rising again, gathering strength in the east. Gandalf could feel it, like a cold wind before a storm. He left the Shire immediately after, seeking out answers from the one place that had never failed him, Gondor's archives. He needed to know for sure. If this truly was the One Ring, then the War of the Ring hadn't ended with Isildur. It had just paused. And now, it was beginning again. In both stories, time was running out. Malik spent the next few days constantly looking over his shoulder. At school, he noticed new people around, adults posing as janitors, substitute teachers, delivery men who lingered too long. He couldn't prove anything, but he felt it. His instincts were screaming at him. Then one evening, the woman from the building showed up at his front door. "I shouldn't be here," she said in a whisper. "But you need to know Leah's gone. We think they found her. You might be next." Malik's breath caught in his throat. "What do I do?" She handed him a burner phone. "You run. You keep quiet. You trust no one except this number," she said, pointing to a contact saved as safe line. "And the files?" Malik asked. "Keep them hidden. Don't try to be a hero." But Malik wasn't sure he had a choice anymore. As darkness grew in both his world and Gandalf's, the pieces were shifting quickly. Frodo didn't yet understand what he carried. Malik didn't fully grasp what he had uncovered. But in both timelines, innocence was being stripped away. The truth, once found, demanded action. And the moment to stay silent was slipping through their fingers. Gandalf returned to Isengard, seeking counsel one final time from Saruman, but what he found was betrayal. Saruman wasn't just blind to the ring's power. He had been drawn to it. Seduced by it. He wanted the ring for himself. He had aligned with Sauron. And Gandalf, weary and furious, was now trapped. Back in the city, Malik's phone buzzed just once. A single message. "They're coming tonight." He packed a bag, grabbed the files, and slipped quietly through the back door. He didn't know where he was going, only that he couldn't stop moving. The only thing worse than being afraid was being still. Above him, drones blinked silently in the sky. In Middle-earth, Frodo stared at the ring in his palm. So small. So innocent-looking. And yet, a storm was coming. In both stories, the shadows had stretched too far. There was no turning back. And the moment of truth was about to strike. Malik moved quickly through back alleys and side streets, heart thudding like a war drum in his chest. The city looked different under streetlights, colder, quieter, almost like it was holding its breath. The burner phone buzzed again. This time, no words. Just a pin dropped on a map and a countdown timer, 45 minutes ticking down. He didn't know what would happen when the timer hit 0, but he was sure of one thing now: someone was trying to erase everything, including him. He ducked into an old community center a few blocks from the coordinates. It was mostly abandoned now, the kind of place kids used to hang out in before it got shut down. He needed a second to think. He took out the files again, flipping through them, looking for something he might have missed. In one of the folders marked Project Stonegate, he noticed a symbol he hadn't seen before, an eye inside a triangle, just faint enough that it almost disappeared into the page. He recognized it. His civics teacher, Mr. Kinley, wore a pin just like that on his jacket every day. Malik had always thought it was just some design or maybe a school logo. But now, it clicked. He stared at the paper, his mind racing. Had Kinley been part of this from the beginning? Was he one of them? Or was he something else entirely? Malik didn't wait. He grabbed his things and ran. His feet barely touched the ground. If Kinley was involved, then either he was a traitor or he was the only person Malik had left to trust. Either way, he needed answers. Meanwhile, in another time and another world, Gandalf hung suspended at the top of Saruman's tower. His wrists were bound, his staff taken. Saruman walked circles below him, calm, controlled, dangerous. "You still don't understand, Gandalf," Saruman said. "This world is already lost. Better to join the tide than drown in it." But Gandalf had seen enough over the centuries to know when a tide was poisoned. "You have betrayed everything we were meant to stand for," he whispered, his voice hoarse. Saruman smiled. "Perhaps. But I will be remembered when this new age begins." As he turned away, a great shadow passed over Isengard. A black-winged creature flew high above the tower, circling once before disappearing into the clouds. Gandalf's eyes followed it. A Nazgul. The ringwraiths had returned. The enemy was already on the move. Back in the city, Malik reached Kinley's house just as the countdown on the burner phone hit 5 minutes. He knocked fast, then harder. Lights came on. The door creaked open. Kinley looked half asleep, confused. "Malik." Without hesitation, Malik shoved past him and held out the files. "You need to see this. Now. Before we both disappear." Kinley's expression changed fast. He locked the door behind them and led Malik into a small back office. Maps. Old books. A dusty laptop. And in the center of it all, the same symbol from the file. But this one wasn't hidden. It was engraved in metal, centered on the wall. Kinley sat down slowly, eyes scanning the papers Malik had brought. "You weren't supposed to see any of this," he said after a moment. Malik's chest tightened. "So you are one of them?" Kinley looked at him carefully. "I was. A long time ago. But I left. Because I saw what they were really planning." "What is it?" Malik asked. "What's Project Stonegate?" Kinley hesitated, then said the words like they were made of glass. "It's the erasure of truth." He explained quickly. The group wasn't just a corporation or a political puppet master, it was a shadow organization with one goal: control the truth by rewriting the present. They had technology, AI systems, surveillance grids, blackmail databases, and they had begun using them to delete people. Not physically, but digitally. Wiping out identities. Making journalists vanish. Silencing witnesses. Malik had stumbled into the middle of their operations, and what he carried could expose it all. "Why me?" Malik asked, his voice small. Because the system doesn't watch people like you. You're invisible to them. Until you're not. Before Kinley could say more, a sound shattered the air, tires screeching outside, followed by the heavy thud of boots on concrete. They had tracked Malik again. There was no more time to explain. Kinley grabbed a hard drive from a safe hidden in the wall. Take this. It has everything. Redundancies. Backups. Locations. Get it out. There's a contact, someone at a broadcast station in Toronto. You get it there, and the world changes. Malik shook his head. What about you? Kinley looked back at him. I was always a loose end. But you're still the beginning. He shoved the drive into Malik's bag and opened the back door just as the front was being kicked in. Malik ran into the alley, the sound of boots and shouting growing louder behind him. And then, just before he turned the corner, he looked back. Kinley was gone. Far away, Frodo was beginning his journey. Gandalf was still trapped, but a whisper in the wind had reached the eagles. Help was coming, but it might be too late. Sauron's eye was open again, its reach growing faster than the world could prepare for. The second twist came not with an explosion, but with silence. Malik made it to a train station. Slipped into the last car before it pulled out. He sat alone, breath heavy, eyes darting. He thought he was safe for now. Until the woman from before sat down across from him. But she didn't look the same. Her belly was gone. Her hair was different. Her smile, calm and calculating. Long ride ahead, she said, reaching into her coat. Malik froze. The first time she handed him a note. This time, she might not be giving him anything. And in both worlds, the shadow crept closer, leaving only one question hanging in the air. What happens when the truth becomes the enemy? Malik sat frozen in his seat, eyes locked on the woman across from him. She looked nothing like the exhausted pregnant stranger from the bus weeks ago. Gone was the belly. Gone was the vulnerability. What sat in front of him now was sharp, focused, and dangerous. Yet, her eyes. There was something there, something real. A trace of the same woman who had once smiled softly as he gave her his seat. She reached slowly into her coat. Malik's hands twitched toward his bag. Every muscle in his body screamed to run. But instead of a weapon, she pulled out a photo. It was him on the bus, giving up his seat. And behind him, just barely in the frame, was a man in a dark coat, holding a phone to his ear. The photo was circled in red ink. The man's face was stern, and his eyes cold. He was the target, she said. Not me. You gave up your seat right before he was about to act. That moment disrupted everything. They thought I was vulnerable. I let them think that. But you gave me a window. That single choice bought time. Malik blinked, still trying to understand. So you're not with them? No, she said, and her voice cracked now not with fear, but with fatigue. I was running. Hiding in plain sight. And I never meant for you to get pulled into this. But once you were, they couldn't let you go. She slid another item across the table, a memory card. That drive you have. It's only one half. This is the other. Together, they show everything. Not just the data, but the real-time feed. The planning. The execution. The erasures. And one last thing, they show who's in charge. Malik hesitated, heart pounding. Kinley said there was someone in Toronto. A contact. She nodded. He's waiting. But you have to get this to him before midnight. That's when they push the reset. The reset. They're launching a system update, AI-based filtering of news, search, social media. Every file, every image, every face tied to their operations will vanish in a blink. Everyone they've marked becomes a ghost. And you're at the top of the list. Malik felt cold all over. His fingers closed around the card like it was the last thread holding his world together. Why are you helping me? She paused. Looked out the train window for a moment. Then said softly, because someone once helped me. Gave up something small, and it changed everything. At that exact moment in another age, Frodo stood before the fires of Mount Doom, trembling. Behind him, Gollum lunged, wild with hunger and madness. And Gandalf, far away, standing on a hill, felt the weight of destiny pressing in. The world held its breath. As the train neared the border, Malik sent a message to the Toronto contact. One word, ready. But just as he hit send, a deafening screech rang out. The train lurched. Outside, flashing lights appeared, blocking the tracks. They had found him again. Malik and the woman ran. Through the cars. Over luggage. Into the shadows. Shouts echoed behind them. Footsteps closing in. She shoved a key into his hand. Locker 618 at the station. Get there. Leave the files. Then disappear. What about you? He yelled. But she didn't answer. She turned around, pulled a hood over her head, and walked directly toward the shouting. She would distract them. Buy him a few seconds. And that was all he had left. Malik ran. Through tunnels. Past guards. Past frightened strangers who had no idea what was unfolding right in front of them. He found the locker. Opened it. Placed the drive and the card inside. Locked it with shaking fingers. And then he ran again, vanishing into the city before the sirens could find him. Hours later, the files were retrieved by the contact. Uploaded. Broadcasted. The internet didn't explode, but it shifted. A wave of shock rippled through governments, newsrooms, and agencies. Faces appeared. Names were exposed. A silent war, hidden in plain sight, was now out in the open. People demanded answers. Investigations were launched. Some tried to deny it. Others disappeared overnight. But the system didn't reset. The truth broke through before it could be erased. And somewhere in the noise, Malik sat quietly in a corner cafe, watching from a borrowed phone. He wore a hoodie now, his backpack close to him. He looked like just another teenager. No one knew what he had done. No one knew how close the world had come to forgetting itself. But he knew. In Middle-earth, Frodo dropped the ring. Gollum fell with it. And in that fiery moment, the shadow of Sauron broke apart. The sky cracked open, and the world breathed again. But then came the final twist. As Malik stood to leave, a hand slid a small envelope onto his table. No words. No sender. He looked around. No one was watching. Inside was a single photo. It was him, years younger, sitting beside his grandmother on a park bench. But this version of the photo wasn't like the one his family had. In the corner of the image, almost invisible, was the same triangle symbol. She had known. His grandmother had been part of something too. A thread woven deep into the past. And now, it was his turn to carry it forward. Because in every world, whether it's filled with rings of power or shadows of silence, the smallest person, making the smallest choice, can still tip the balance of everything. Malik stared at the photo in his hands, heart caught somewhere between wonder and confusion. It was unmistakably him and his grandmother years ago, in the summer light of Lincoln Park. He remembered that day. They'd just come back from church. She'd bought him ice cream even though he didn't finish his chores. He remembered how she sat with both hands around her cane, humming a soft tune, always looking around like she knew things most people didn't. But he had never noticed the symbol before. It was on a newspaper peeking from her bag, barely visible, but it was there, the same triangle with the eye inside. The same symbol that showed up in the files, the documents, and on Mr. Kinley's wall. That changed everything. She hadn't just taught him to be kind. She had prepared him, in quiet, patient ways, without ever saying the words. She must have known what might come. And now, he understood why she always said, some things don't need to be loud to be powerful. The next few days passed in a blur. The data had gone public. The truth was out. Names were being questioned on the news. Some of the high-level figures from the files had already resigned. Others denied everything. Social media erupted with debates, hashtags, and videos breaking down the footage Malik had risked everything to deliver. For the first time in a long time, people weren't just scrolling, they were watching, listening, questioning. The public wanted answers. They wanted accountability. Malik didn't come forward. He stayed in the background, just like the woman had advised. If he revealed himself, it could put him and the people around him in danger again. But he didn't need the world to know. He had done what needed to be done. That was enough. Kinley's name appeared in the leak, but not as a conspirator, as a whistleblower. Someone had protected his legacy. Whether it was the woman or someone else, Malik wasn't sure. But he was glad. The teacher who once spoke about truth being heavier than lies was now seen as a silent hero. People left flowers outside Kinley's classroom. His face went viral. And for a brief moment, the world remembered what integrity looked like. As for the woman from the bus, no one saw her again. Malik sometimes wondered if she even survived the train station. He liked to believe she did. He liked to believe she was out there somewhere, doing what she'd always done, watching from the shadows, helping people connect dots they didn't even know existed. There was a strange kind of peace in that idea. In Middle-earth, the ring was gone. Frodo returned to the Shire, but he was never truly the same. Some things, once seen, couldn't be unseen. And Gandalf. He too had passed beyond the responsibilities of Middle-earth. But before he did, he left behind one message. That courage often came from those who never sought it. Malik understood that now. You didn't need a staff, a sword, or a grand destiny to fight for what's right. Sometimes, all it took was noticing someone who needed a seat. A choice that looked small, but started something enormous. Weeks later, a letter arrived with no stamp and no return address. Inside was a simple card. One sentence, handwritten. The first wave is over. Get ready for the second. Malik folded the card and tucked it into his notebook. He didn't know what the next wave would be, but he wasn't afraid anymore. He had seen how the system worked. He had seen how fragile power became when exposed to truth. He had played his part once, and if needed, he would again. He spent the rest of the summer quietly, walking through old streets, revisiting parks and places that felt safe. He stopped by his grandmother's grave one morning, left a single sunflower, her favorite, and whispered, "Thank you." He knew now that her kindness wasn't just habit. It was resistance. It was legacy. At school, people noticed a difference in him. He didn't talk much about what happened. But his presence changed. More focused. More grounded. When a younger student was being mocked in the hallway, Malik stepped in without thinking. When the local youth center reopened, he signed up to volunteer. He didn't need to fix the world overnight. He just needed to show up for it. That's what she did. That's what Gandalf did. That's what the world needed now, more people willing to notice, to act, even when no one was watching. Months later, a documentary surfaced titled The Invisible War, How One Choice Changed Everything. It never named Malik. It never pointed to any single person. But those who knew, knew. The credits rolled over a black screen with one line. The smallest person can still change the course of the future. And somewhere, in a quiet corner of the city, Malik watched it play on a borrowed laptop. He smiled, closed the lid, and looked out the window. The world hadn't healed. But it had woken up. And that was a start.